This is the Asceny One keyboard. It's a 60% board and it has Gateron optical black switches in it. It's so loud, it absolutely melts my brain. I brought down another 60% board I have with blue switches for comparison. Like normally you would consider blue switches to be like the loudest thing, or you know, clicky switches in general to be the loudest thing. But for linear switches on this particular keyboard, this thing is loud. Now, I got this off Amazon for 20 bucks. It was $19.99. It's on sale. As of the time I'm making this video, it was $20. So it might be a different price if you go looking for it. We're gonna mod this thing. We're gonna lube up the switches. I'm gonna see what I can do to it. I'm not sure exactly what mods can be done to these optical PCBs. I really don't know. There might be a lot involved in modding one of these PCBs. We're going to take it apart and see what we can do, and hopefully we can quiet this thing down. It's very hollow. Just sounds like a bad membrane keyboard to me, honestly. It's so hollow, and let's see what we can do to this thing. Let's start by getting the caps off here. And now we're gonna start pulling the switches. Looks like the stabilizers are pre-lubed. Not very well. There's just like one little drip of lube on them. The stems do look lubricated though, so that's good. So we got most of our switches out, but I like to pull the outer edges after taking the PCB out. So we're gonna go ahead and unscrew the PCB and the plate and get them out of here so that I don't mangle up the case while I'm trying to remove the top and bottom rows. Quite a lot of screws for this small of a keyboard, honestly. 8 screws for that. PCB is a little bit bananaed there. And this is our case. Very empty, very hollow. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the PCB. Since there's no pins on optical switches except for the main pin, I think it'll just come right out. I might be wrong. I might have to pull the switches first. This is my first time goofing around with optical switches. All right, does the PCB just separate? Yep. Got a little bit of foam by the space bar. Definitely different from what I'm used to, but that's cool. That's the whole reason I bought this. Okay, yeah, there definitely is some lube in these stabilizers, but we are going to pop these out and we are going to relube them ourselves. All right, stabilizers out. I don't know how easy it is to see, but there's a bunch of lubricant all over the PCB here. We're gonna try to wipe that up a little bit. While we're at it, I have some alcohol on a toothbrush here, and I'm just gonna clean the whole PCB because there's some flux and lube that's gotten onto the back here. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I got a pour-on foam kit, and I'm just checking to see if there's gonna be any problem with the little laser beams that actuate the keystroke when you press an optical switch. And it doesn't look like there's any on the front. There may be some interference on the back with the pin. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to check that in a little bit, but I'm glad to know that works. I am probably gonna pull this foam off of here and use this instead just because it's a little larger. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So this is switch pad. Basically it's a giant switch pad that you get in that kit, and with optical switches you cannot cover this portion, and that's because there's a little beam, and when your pin goes through there, your pin breaks that beam, and that is what registers your keystroke. This switch pad is intended for regular mechanical switches. So if we are going to use this, we are going to have to mod it. I am not entirely sure I want to go through that process. I might try to cut like one of these out and see how annoying it is. And if it's not that annoying, then maybe perhaps I will go ahead and cut out all 60 of them, or 61 of them as the case may be. Everything else fits fine. Everything's good, except for we cannot cover up those little lasers. I'm afraid that this will push down with the switches on it. Maybe it won't. Maybe there is no reason to worry about that. I guess we could put the whole thing together and see what happens. And if it sucks and it doesn't work, then we could take it back out and mod it. That is probably what we should do for the sake of investigation, I guess. Yeah, let's do that. Let's not cut this yet. Okay, this is going to be my first time trying to open up one of these optical switches. They have an extra pin, which I hope is not actually connected. Otherwise, this is going to suck. Let's find out. Not a good start. Well, the housing is up. My switch opener's not exactly what I would call great anyway. Which makes lubricating switches way more of a pain than it probably should be. So there we go. Just like a regular switch, except for no leaf. There is no little mechanical leaf. And you can see the little, I don't know that you can see it, but there is a tiny little hole in the bottom if you don't know about optical switches. And the stem just pushes down into that hole, and that is what breaks the little light beam. These do technically actuate faster, so they should be good for gaming and all that, but I did get the blacks, which are a higher force spring, so that's going to be new for me. I'm going to start lubing these. So here's my pile of crap after opening all these things and getting ready to lube them. I'm going to try to show you how I lube one of these. This is how I would typically lube a switch. You put a Tritox 205G like substance on a lid or something, because you don't really want that much on your brush. Take your brush, I lube the two sliders on the side where the stem is going to slide, just very lightly, and then I go around the bottom pin, making sure to get the whole thing where the spring is going to go. Just lube that up really good. And you can lube, like on a mechanical switch, you can lube these two little edges of the leaf where your feet go if you would like to. You don't have to. And then for the top housing, kind of same thing. Got a little chunk on there or something. Looked like plastic. So I lube all four sides of this just because I believe that the whole stem touches the whole top housing. So I see a lot of people kind of skimp on this part, and I personally believe you shouldn't. I understand that it sucks lubing these things. It takes forever. If you're going to go through the trouble of doing it, why not at least do a good job? Like, do it all the way. And I don't know, maybe there's videos out there showing that this is an absolute waste of time. I see the whole top housing hitting the stem, and I want to lube it all. For my springs, I do what I guess I will call dip lubing them, meaning I just take the spring and I drop it in 3-in-1 multi-purpose oil. I know you've probably never seen another person on the internet use 3-in-1 to lube their springs, but I have been fixing, building guitars for a long time, and I can tell you that there's really nothing better for a spring than 3-in-1. It coats the thing completely, it lasts, it works really well. And then I just take it out of the 3-in-1 and I drop it on a paper towel and roll it around, maybe even shake it a little to get off any excess. And then we pop that back in, and then we can lube our stem. I use a jeweler's tool, grab this part, get a little more lube on our brush. Again, you do not need much. You really just want to see the side of the stem get shiny, get like a sheen to it. Since this is a linear mechanical switch, I'm lubing the little legs. The optical switches that are in the keyboard we just built do not have these legs, doesn't need them. I go all the way around, I lube the whole stem very lightly, and then I go around the world inside the stem as well. The reason I do this is because I want that little bit of lube that builds up in there to get on the spring, just to help quiet the spring down even further. And when you're done, you can just drop your stem into the spring, grab your top housing. The more bulbous side of the top housing goes to the leaf side of a mechanical switch. On the optical switch, you can tell by the open side going towards the area where the LED shines through. And there you go. You have a fully lubed switch. Now you just do that, 60 to 100 and what, 3 more times, something like that. So the idea of having a white plate on a black keyboard bothers me because I don't want to see it, and I know the keys should cover it up, but they don't. So we are going to paint this thing black. I'm going to take some 400 grit sandpaper. Actually, I believe this is 320. That will be good enough. I'm just going to lightly scuff up the top, wipe it clean, and then go hit it with some spray paint real quick. I just shot the plate with some black spray paint, and while we are waiting for that to dry, we are going to turn our attention to this case. And what we are going to do is a silicone resin pour. We are going to fill the bottom of this case, and that is going to make it much denser. I've done this on a few boards already, and I really love it. All you really have to remember is to plug any little holes, and then you don't want to go above. Not sure how well you guys can see this, but you can see there's these little things around the standoffs, these little plastic barbs around the standoffs. You do not want to pour deeper than that. That is as high as you want to go, because that's where your PCB sits. You do have to kind of prop it up when it's drying so that it doesn't all just leak forward. And you have to remember definitely to plug the holes. What I've been using to plug the holes is blue tack, and it works quite well. Fill in the holes. Now this isn't going to be there forever, because when the silicone dries, you can peel it right out. It's removable. So if you don't like the way it turns out, if you're not happy with it for some reason, you can just take it out. And this to me is way cleaner and nicer than tape. Don't worry about making room for your USB thing to stick through, because you can just cut the silicone when you're done. It's very easy to just grab some scissors or a knife and cut the silicone. So what I have to do now is mix these two parts for 5 minutes. So you want to pour in equal amounts of both parts, and then you're ready to pour. So I am going to mix this up, and then I will bring you back for the pour. Okay, well, I've been stirring the silicone for a little over 5 minutes, so it is time to get to pouring. This is a really deep board, and I may not have mixed up enough. I think we're gonna make it. Okay, there's definitely too much in the front, not enough in the back, so we're gonna have to kick this backwards. I've heard people talk about this as being a pain, and I don't really find it to be. I think it's pretty easy to do. You literally just mix up the silicone and pour it in, and then wait. It says 6 to 9 hours. I find you pretty much need to wait till the next day. I am going to prop this up somewhere so that all the silicone stays where I want it to. That is another thing. You do have to kind of find something to stick under the front. You could just wad up some paper essentially. You do have to do something to keep the silicone from slinking back down to the front of the keyboard. So here is our silicone pour. That's what it looks like when it comes out. I cut a chunk out here to make room for the USB-C port. More or less, you can see that it will pretty much just drop back in, push it back down over all the little nubs. And if you're wondering how much weight it adds, it does add quite a chunk of weight. I mean, you can tell we mixed up about half of a 16-ounce solo cup, so we probably added 8 ounces of silicone. So here is our plate. It has been painted black, and now we are going to reassemble it with some foam onto our PCB, which I have also, of course, tape modded. There are 3 layers of blue painter's tape stuck on the back of the PCB, and we are pretty much ready to get this thing put back together. I got this foam kit on Amazon as well, and I think it's a pretty good deal. It's 14 bucks, and you get the dampener for the plate. You get a piece of foam that you can put into your case, and you get these nice little sticky foam standoffs, which I sometimes put around the inside of a case, but I won't be doing on this one. Only using these two. And again, like I said, I am hoping that this is going to work. There's really only one way to find out, which is to put the keyboard together. See if we can get this sandwich made without it doing some crazy stuff. Might see if I can stick a couple of switches in to hold it together. I kind of think maybe I should plug in this PCB now and test it and see if these switches are going to work with this switch pad on, because I'm not entirely sure that they're going to, and I might save myself a lot of time later. Number one, they're making the switch almost want to come out of the plate. In fact, I think part of the reason they're staying in the plate is because I painted the plate so it got a little thicker. But then yeah, I'm also not sure if that little piece of foam is going to block the beam of light for these switches. Okay, now we are going to mod our stabilizers. Unfortunately, one of the stabilizers was broken. Not sure if you can see that, but this little foot was completely broke. It's possible I did that removing it. I doubt it, but it's possible that I did, so we're gonna have to replace that. Fortunately, I do have some extra parts, so we are just gonna grab one of these housings, which is ostensibly the same. Instead of being a moron, we'll just get rid of one of these and we'll replace one entire stabilizer. First thing I'm going to do is try to clean as much of the old lube off of these as I can. Okay, so basically these have all gone through a bath of 99% rubbing alcohol a couple times to get most of the old lube off. And now we are going to clip all of these stabilizers. Just going to show you, if I can, what I like to do, which is we are going to nip the two legs off of our stems, and then what I do on these guys is I actually clip the upper stems. I've been doing this on the last couple of boards I've built. I'm not sure if it makes a massive difference, but I do see these rails as just another thing for the stem to rattle against. It's just an experiment. I'm not telling you to do this, but I've noticed a lot of the more expensive kind of high-end stabilizers don't have the rails. For me, I think it's pretty cool, but try it at your own risk. Funnily enough, there were two different types of stems, or two different types of feet on the bottom of these black stems. There were some that just angled up and had no bump on the bottom like you would normally see, and then there were some of the normal type, but there were only like two of the normal type, so I don't know if they just ran out at the factory or what, but there were already two different types of stems in these stabilizers, which, you know, I guess $20 keyboard, so now we're gonna have three different types. I'm moving my lube out of my lube container and putting it onto a clean Ziploc bag here, and when I'm done, I'm going to just toss this brush. I don't know what kind of lube they used on these housings, so you really don't want to mix your lubricants like whenever possible, especially if it's like a grease, like a solid grease. They can like gum up. I'm sure if you're here, you've probably watched people lube stabilizer housings and stems. There's really not too much to it. Just get a very thin light coat over the entire inside of the housing, and then get a thin coat all over the sides of the stems, and then just set them aside. So that is pretty much how I do a housing. I'll do a stem for you. Maybe I'll do a black one so it's a little easier to see what I'm doing. It's really no different than lubricating the switch. You really don't want like a massive amount of lube on here. You just want to put a shine on it, more or less. And I dropped the damn thing. Rubbed about half the lube off with my thumb. So really, once you get a bit of a shine, you're kind of done. And I basically lubricate everything but the bottom. And now we are going to lube our wires and assemble all of these. And we are going to do that with some dielectric grease, which I have somewhere. And the Permatex tune-up dielectric grease is absolutely perfect for this. Basically just stick the whole thing in there. You want to go beyond the 45 degree. Go a good little bit beyond the 45 degree actually. And really, you almost can't use too much. I mean, I think you sort of can use too much, but you almost can't use too much. There should be a ludicrous amount of lube on there. And then that's going to go into the upper hole, which on the stem would be the lower hole. And you just turn and snap it in. As you can see, I did go back and take out the switch pad. Switch pad just does not work with these optical switches. You could make it work. You would have to essentially cut out anywhere you see this denting. That would all have to be cut out, which is pretty much the entire bottom of the switch. So it's pretty useless to even mod it, in my opinion anyway. I mean, go ahead and spend 2 hours cutting that thing out for little to no help of any sort. But yeah, I ended up taking that out because when I went upstairs and tested this, these switches over here, some of them were not working. So that let me know that yes, that switch pad was definitely not causing interference everywhere, but it was causing interference in some places, and I just do not want to deal with that. Basically, there's little notches on the sides of the stabilizers that, with the clip-ins anyway, that will tell you which direction you need to go. And I'm going to be very upset probably because I might have to take this whole thing apart again because the LEDs are getting in the way of the stabilizer wire. I don't think I can get the wire over the LED. So any of the ones where the stabilizer wire goes up are just not going to work. The ones where it goes down, I can clip them in. That really sucks. So these two I can't clip in because the LED's in the wrong spot, as well as probably this guy I'm not going to be able to clip in. That's just great. So now I'm going to disassemble this damn thing for the second time because these LEDs are too big and I can't get the stabilizer wires past them. Okay, for keycaps, I just used the black caps that came with the board. I had some red PVD caps and some white caps that came off an RK61, I believe. This thing is really fast. Is it wooting fast? Probably not, but it's almost wooting fast, and I could buy 8 of these for the price of the wooting. So I would, yeah, I would probably buy 8 of these instead of 1 wooting. Anyway, so I think it sounds about 1,000 times better now, but I will let you be the judge.